It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
What do you think? Am I actually here? Good morning, everybody. My name is Adrian Goins, and I want to welcome you to episode 22 of Coffee and Cloud Native. Maybe I started the show right? I don't know. I almost didn't. It's really funny. I even have a checklist. I've been practicing. There's just so many different things that I have to click to actually get it out to the internet. But it looks like we're good. And Trick says we're good. I was wondering if any of you had odds on whether or not I would start the show right, and Trick said he wouldn't take a bet that he was going to lose. And I figured that somebody out there has a bookie Ricky the Greek or something like that. It's yeah, I'll give you 7-1 that Adrian doesn't start the show. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to take that. So, hi. Every night, I and my army of bots scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native. And every day, you'll find me here to share the bits that I find interesting. This is a curated list of content. I go through around 200 submissions every night, and I select only a handful for the next day's show. Some of you have noticed that I have a disclaimer up now. Sorry. But just because I'm wearing a Rancher hoodie doesn't mean that what I'm saying is Rancher talking. This is my show. These are my opinions. And I don't want anybody to get confused. So, yay, disclaimer. I have opinions. Anyway, if you're watching now or in the future, please click the thumbs up button on the video so that the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. I put this show together for you so that we can all learn and grow together. I try to end each day with knowledge that I didn't have when the day began, and I'm grateful that you're here with me so that, you can watch me totally screw it up. What do we got in the chat? Oh, we have a bunch of people. Nice. Oh, Chris said 5-1 on odds. All right, I was thinking 7-1, but 5-1, I'll take that. All right, so Justin's here. We've got Peter, Ariel, Trix, good morning, Binoy, Nuno, Sajad, hey Sajad, and Sebastian, Michael. All right, so let's dive in. Actually, you know what? Before we dive in, you noticed probably that yesterday's show and today's show are in a different environment. And I asked some people yesterday what they thought. So I'm going to run the show here in the main studio for a week. Throughout the week, let me know how you feel about this. I know that this has better lighting, it's got a green screen, and it looks all polished and professional. In the other studio at my desk, I try to make it as polished and professional as I can, but it's obviously at my desk. And somebody said yesterday that the desk has a more comfortable, homey, hanging out kind of feel, whereas this seems more like a studio, because that's what it is. Which do you prefer? And if I get enough people by Friday that say this, then I'll keep this. If they say desk, I'll switch back to desk. If it's a tie, I'll just switch it up as the days go by. Let me know, okay? Browser. All right. In today's browser, we have the chat. So those of you who are watching but not participating in the chat can also see stuff going by. Rancher Academy. It opened its doors on May 15th. Here we are, 94 days later. Actually, yesterday was 94 days. Today is the 95th day, and it issued its 1,000th certificate. I wrote a blog that'll show up later on the Rancher website, and in it I talk about how open source software levels the playing field. I believe that open source software makes it possible for people to build a secure, prosperous future with nothing more than tenacity, discipline, courage, ingenuity, and passion. And those are just 5 of the traits that I grabbed out of the air that basically say, you are in control. There's an interesting thing that happens when we look at our feet. We only see how we got here. If you're ever crossing a bridge or a wire, not that, how many of you are crossing wires, right? I'm sure we're all tightrope walkers. But if you've ever done a slack line, or if you ride a motorcycle, anything that requires balance, if you look at your feet, you'll fall. If you look at the road in front of you on a motorcycle, your balance will be squirrely. If you look at the distance, if you look down the road into the future, far ahead, then you can cross really thin, precarious routes, back to the wire walking again, with better balance. That's how I see life. We need to look into the future. We need to imagine what exists out there, and our brains then build a bridge that gets us there. So I end each show, and I remind all of you to keep learning, and I mean it. Like, I'm showing the Rancher Academy here, but I show lots of stuff where you can learn things. I have some stuff coming up later on. Learn something new every day. This is how I stay young, how I remind my brain and the world around me that I am a being in motion. I'm never still, and I never accept this moment for everything that could ever be. Once I've accomplished now, move on to accomplishing whatever comes next. The Rancher Academy, 1000th certificate. That's pretty awesome. This is free. If you want to learn about Rancher, go there. Hooray. Oh, wow, my notes are totally out of order. Okay, that's fine. We'll jump over here. So, would you like to spin up an EKS cluster with Spot, autoscaling, ingress, Vault, Prometheus, and Grafana with a single Docker run command? Yeah. Okay, so imagine that you're having a conversation. And you're like, oh, okay, I want to build a cluster, and I want to use Terraform, and I want Spot autoscaling, and I want Vault, and I want Prometheus, and I want Grafana. But I don't know Terraform. I know Docker, so I want to use Docker run. Well, that's what you have here. It's kind of crazy. Basically, this is from, who's this from? Wow, my notes are totally out of order. I don't have the, it's from Kubernetes. There you go. Normally I have the app page or the repo up afterwards. So Kubernetes created a whole way to spin up EKS clusters and install all of these other things. And then they decided to just wrap it in a container so that people who don't know how to use all of these tools can just use Docker run and get an EKS cluster that has all of this stuff. It's got auto fleet spotting. It has, it comes up in about 15 minutes. It uses S3. It's got Vault. It's got Grafana. It's got all sorts of stuff. And I'll have a link for that in the show notes. Next, we have Kate's sidecar injector. So Tumblr had a need for Tumblr, right? How many of you remember when Tumblr started? It's like Tumblr in my mind is still that blog created by that 17-year-old kid. But now Tumblr is a big deal. They still exist and they use Kubernetes, which is cool. So they had a need for dynamically creating sidecars for workloads. But their workloads needed different combinations of sidecars and possibly different versions for the different things. Sometimes some needed up to 5 sidecars to do something. And they decided that rather than care about what versions need to go where, they would just dynamically attach these things. So they created the Kubernetes sidecar injector that does it for them. Oh, my dogs are going to start barking in a second. It does it for them. And now they can just annotate their workloads for whatever the thing needs to run. The injector mutates the manifest to include the additional containers, and then that becomes what's launched after performing the mutation. It also annotates the manifest, saying that the mutation is done, so any restart or scale of the resource doesn't result in repeatedly adding more and more sidecars until the cluster crashes. So that's nice. They've even got some nice ASCII web art here for a network diagram because, at the end of the day, it's Tumblr and well, they just kind of don't care. Like, they care, but it's cool to pretend that you don't. I showed this last week and I didn't get to it until today. Marr. Here's where we start talking like a pirate. Gar. Peirates, with a very cool spelling, is a penetration testing tool for Kubernetes that runs from inside the cluster. It can do analysis and compromise of poorly configured clusters. Basically, it's a security analysis tool that skips the analysis and goes right to owning the cluster. They assume that you can get this into a container somehow, so it assumes that you already have some level of access, and it's designed to pivot and escalate your privileges. So it can do all sorts of stuff, from recon to reverse shell, pulling service tokens from GCS, IAM credentials from AWS or GCP, and lots more. And they have a really cool logo. This is a blog article that's a little bit light, and I don't have their repo up, but I'll have this linked in the show notes, and you can check it out. Now, obviously, more disclaimers, run this in your own clusters. Don't go pwning people's clusters because you can, but run it and see what's there to be seen. Make sure that your doors and windows are secure so that, because there's people that are going to come by and rattle them. You could also use it as part of your own toolkit with Kubernetes Goat or Simulator if you want to practice penetration testing in Kubernetes. And if you don't know about Simulator, we covered that in episode 15. Nuno says that Docker now has a cloud plugin for ACI and ECS. It's not totally the same as in the blog, but a good start for users who want to run Docker run. Nice. Peirates P5s. Is it really 1, 2, 4, P6S? Peirates itself would be P5S. Anyway, yeah. Training and Kubernetes cost money. It's just a fact of life, but they don't have to. One of the things that my friend Paul has struggled with when learning Kubernetes is that a lot of stuff needs big, beefy hardware, and big hardware costs money. So it's a chicken and an egg scenario. How do you learn the skills without breaking the bank when there's no company to foot the bill? And then how do you get hired for using the skills when you can't pay for the equipment to learn them? So Aiden Hodovic, I'm guessing, sorry if I butchered your name, has an article that shows how to leverage GCP's preemptible nodes, which are sort of like EC2 spot instances, to do this. He has some price comparisons here that were pretty impressive. So for AWS, you've got a minimum entry cost of $72 a month if you want to run. I don't know if that's for EC2 or, yeah, that's for EKS. So yeah, not free. But with Google, you can get this preemptible cluster, and you can use big nodes and get up to 80% savings. So he says like an N2D standard 4 would normally cost $153, but you can get it down to $46. He breaks this down for smaller instances as you go down, and basically you can get a decent Kubernetes cluster to play with for pretty cheap. And if you spin this thing up and spin it back down again, then it's even cheaper. But ultimately, the idea is on preemptible nodes, they can come along and shut them down with 2 minutes notice. But if you're just playing with it, that's cool. You could have one node that doesn't get terminated if you have any workloads that just can't afford to be terminated. The point is, this is one of the places where you can go and you can get access to things for cheap. Don't let life get in the way of advancing your own life. There's always going to be obstacles. Just, overcome. Now we're discussing the spelling of pirates. Gar! I should just talk in the rest of the show like a pirate. And then you'd all leave. Next. Oh, all right. Yeah. So bear with me here because this is like a little bit Inception-y. Oh, you remember yesterday when I didn't know what time it was? I like Apple products. Got my iPad Pro. I got what is this? This is a MacBook Air that's actually just a prop today because I needed a prop because I have the chat over here. But I've got lots of Apple products. And yesterday, I kept looking at the time, and the time on my iPad Pro says 9:41 on Tuesday, January 9th. And it's going to stay that way until the end of the show. Apple products, when they have bugs, have really bizarre bugs. If I take my iPad and I split the screen, so I've got the two browser windows open here, for some reason that breaks the time. And now the time just says 9:41 on Tuesday, January 9th. I have another clock over here so that I know what time it actually is. But I keep looking at it, and yeah, that's really weird. So 7:44, we have time. Back to this thing. So there's this tool. It's Kubefire. It allows you to manage Kubernetes clusters running on Firecracker MicroVMs. You're like, oh, what's Firecracker? Well, Firecracker is an open source virtualization technology that uses KVM to create and run MicroVMs. What's a MicroVM, you ask? A MicroVM, I'm glad you asked, is a virtual machine with a minimal footprint minimal devices, and minimal guest-facing functionality. That's really hard to say. I almost said minimal. Minimal guest-facing functionality, which gives it a minimal attack surface, reduced startup time, and through all this minimization, you get increased utilization of the hardware on the host machine. So the result is you can pack lots of them on a single machine. And by lots, they mean lots. Amazon made a bunch of noise with this a while ago when they announced that Firecracker was the new foundation for Lambda and Fargate, because the MicroVMs could start up in milliseconds. Milliseconds, right? So it's a good fit for serverless. Well, Kubefire also uses Ignite from Weave. What's Ignite, you ask? Oh, I'm glad you asked. First of all, here's a page that has a Firecracker logo that I was already supposed to show you. The only thing about this iPad thing is the tabs disappear, so I end up having to scroll backwards. More info on Firecracker. Right, here we go. Weave, Ignite, another cool logo. Ignite lets you run OCI-compliant container images as MicroVMs by using Ignite run instead of Docker run. So OCI-compliant container image, just think Docker container. You could even run OS containers that have an init system like systemd or even Docker. So let's recurse back out of this. You have Firecracker and Ignite, and those are being used with Kubefire. Kubefire runs Kubernetes under Firecracker through Ignite. I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but it's just another way to do things. He just launched this, and he has instructions for different Kubernetes distributions. So he's got it for kubeadm, for K3s, and for Scuba from SUSE. I looked into this a little bit further last night. I run Proxmox here at home. Proxmox already uses KVM, so I was like, oh, can I run this whole Firecracker Ignite thing? But you can't natively because there's already a hypervisor there, so you have to run another hypervisor. But what you can do, there was a PR for the Firecracker, for one of these. I don't remember if it was for Firecracker or if it was for Ignite, but there's a PR for how to run this under Proxmox by doing nested virtualization. So I could fire up a virtual machine under Proxmox that then has access to the host hardware directly, and in that I can run Firecracker. And then on that I can run MicroVMs, and in that I can run Kubernetes via Docker. I don't know. Like, it comes back to the why would I want to do this? Ultimately, though, the bottleneck is going to be the hardware. So all of my machines are running multiple VMs, already running LXC containers. They're already doing things. So while I could probably spin up a lot, I don't know how much more density I can get in this. And I'm going to go play with this when I have some time. Because if I can get MicroVMs that give me more density than the LXC containers, I don't know if I'll run Kubernetes on them, but it'll prevent me from having to buy more hardware. I'm basically at max capacity on my Proxmox cluster, and I would really like to buy another 3 of those Protectly nodes that I use. They're these quad-core, 32 gigabyte of RAM fanless systems, because we got to pass the wife test, right? We can't have a bunch of machines in the other room with the fans going. So I'd like to have a cluster that's just dedicated to play, a true lab environment. My home environment's production now. So something that I can like spin stuff up, spin it down, blow it away, reinstall, test things out, and show you guys stuff on the show. They're not cheap. They're not a Raspberry Pi. I see stuff going by in the chat. Wojtek says, why? Yeah, because we can. That's exactly right. Because why not? Because by pushing the limits of things, we understand what's possible. And when we understand the limits of what's possible, we have a whole arena, a whole field, a whole universe of things where we can extract the right solution for whatever the scenario is. Nuno says that he would compare this one to the Hyper-V isolation of Windows containers, for example. I don't know, just because I don't deal with Windows anymore, so I don't. You're probably right. It's nested virtualization. Well, honestly, in my experience, nested virtualization never works well because you're really taxing the functionality of the machine, and it's better ultimately to have a minimal amount of virtualization for the best possible performance. In the Proxmox docs, when they talk about nested virtualization, they talk about that. If you don't give the initial VM direct access at the host level to the CPU, if you're using a virtualized CPU, you can expect your performance to go right out the window. Next up, Litmus is back. We get Litmus on the show from time to time, and they are up today because they have a new website. Yay! But more importantly, they have the new Chaos Hub for sharing chaos engineering experience. First, the website. The website is beautiful and clear, and it looks a little cramped. No, not cramped, but it's narrow in this screen because I have it in a mobile view. But it's nice that they support the mobile view. If you do this on a full screen browser, it's laid out a little bit differently. It's a little less stacked. So they have the new website, which gives you lots of how to get started with Litmus stuff. 1, 2, 3, up and running, no confusion, and that's great. When you confuse, you lose. How's that for a mantra? Then there's the Chaos Hub website. This is cool. Why do you need this? Uma has an intro video where he talks about how to get started with the Chaos Hub. And in it, he says, well, you need this because you can't possibly write all of the experiments for every component of the cluster. You can write them for your application, but by crowdsourcing experiments for other components, then the best experiments rise to the top. Now you can install and utilize chaos engineering for your entire cluster, including your application. In his overview video, he walks through how to get started using this and shows you that some experiments are flagged with probably gonna break stuff. And so he calls those out and gives you strategies for how to test and respond to those events. If you are at KubeCon, LitmusChaos is at KubeCon, so stop by their booth and say hello. They're a CNCF project, and they're doing really great stuff, and they're moving really fast. There's a new worm. It's hard for me to feel sorry for people whose machines get owned because they make easily correctable mistakes. But I don't know. It's like feeling sorry for someone whose house gets robbed because they leave all the doors and windows open and they put a sign in their yard that says, please don't steal my expensive stuff that's in the sock drawer in the closet. However, the people who make the mistakes are usually long gone by the time the compromise appears, and the consequences and cleanup are left for someone else to deal with. So take this case. Ooh, it's a crypto mining worm. It'll compromise your system, or once it's on your system, it looks for AWS credentials that you baked into your container. Don't do that. And then it ships them out to an endpoint. Like it's actually posts to a request endpoint that's like, thanks for your key. Like that, they do it. Yeah, post, thanks for your key, index.php. Like, how's that for a on the way out the door? I'm not allowed to say that word on the show. Anyway, so it jacks your credentials, it installs crypto mining software, it scans your network for open Docker API endpoints, and if it finds one, it installs itself there. And then it continues to do its stuff. The crypto mining software, it mines Monero, which is funny. It'll make like pennies. But hey, if you're done with the machine, like they're not going to be done until they're done. The people who have this, Cato Security, show one of the Monero mining pools that has 119 workers in it. This popped up yesterday. It hasn't made very much money, but that's not the point. The point is that they're doing this. So my concern about this is that if they find AWS credentials in a container, they might be erasing them, or they might be mutating somehow so that you don't know that they got those credentials. And it appears that they're not using the AWS credentials yet. Cato Security posted a honeypot pair of credentials out there. They haven't seen them be used yet. So these might come back later when they start spinning up more machines or doing God knows what. Check your stuff. And honestly, just pretend like you live in a bad neighborhood. Like, do your vulnerability scans, check your stuff in your CI/CD pipelines, make sure the credentials aren't being shipped out. Use something, I was looking up, Glue has in Glue Enterprise, they can look for data streams that are coming out of the container and mutate stuff that has like credit cards or social security numbers or things like that. Granted, an HTTPS post wouldn't detect that, but just there are things that you can do, not only to prevent the horse from getting out of the barn, but to have a fence where the horse gets trapped once he escapes. I don't know if that's a good analogy. What else do we have? Yes. So back to the Kubernetes training. IBM Labs has free training. I haven't looked to see what's actually in here, But they've got a little 1-minute video here that shows that with a free IBM Labs account, you can get free training on real IBM cloud clusters. It looks like it's just, they license Kata Coda stuff, so you're going through actual stuff. But it's free. So there you go. Free is better than cheap, and it's an investment in yourself. As long as you invest and use the skills that you have in yourself, use your own discipline, use your own tenacity, all the stuff that I talked about earlier, use your ingenuity, use your passion, you will find a solution that moves you along your path. Don't accept no. Don't accept obstacles. My parents like to say, when God closes a door, he opens a window. There's lots of ways to look at it. Just because you can't necessarily go here doesn't mean you need to sit down and give up. There you go. Philosophy class with Adrian. Coffee and philosophy. We are quite nearly out of time. So today, I will go to the tool of the day. I will not sing the tool of the day jingle. Tool of the day is interesting. I need your help with this. This came to me yesterday from Craig Johnston, who created the Kube Forward utility that we talked about in yesterday's show. I asked him if he had any other stuff that he likes that he wanted to share, and he shared Kilo. This is a utility that looks super cool. It builds a mesh between nodes in a cluster using wireguard, and that enables you to have multi-cloud clusters. It can run in one of two modes. It can be the complete CNI for your cluster, which runs all of the communication and the VPN between the node pools, or it can just be the outer VPN component that connects the node pools and it leaves the nodes to communicate amongst themselves using whatever your CNI driver is. You can think of that like using BGP for your peering, but OSPF inside. I talked about that yesterday as well. The split mode works with Flannel or KubeRouter. And that was the first shortcoming. I was like, I'm not using Flannel. But if you're using K3S in its default mode, it actually uses Flannel. So he has instructions on how to set this up for K3S, and that's cool. Because it's WireGuard, it also enables VPN access to the cluster itself or the node pools themselves, so you can enable secure access to resources running inside of them. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You can probably enable that with VPN access if you want to make those available to people who don't need to have kubectl access, because otherwise you could just use kubectl port forward. But if you want people to have access without having direct cluster access, then VPN to cluster endpoints it's great. The easy use for this is VPN communication between actual clusters, where nodes in one cluster can access services in another cluster. And he calls those multi-cluster services. Here's where I need your help. He clearly talks about multi-cluster services and multi-cloud clusters, but I couldn't figure out how you take nodes in another location and connect them to a cluster. The instructions talk about using kubectl apply to install a daemon set that then does all of the VPN bridging. But how do you join nodes in a different data center to an existing cluster if you need to use kubectl apply to get the daemon set running, to get the nodes to join the cluster when the nodes aren't joined to the cluster? It's like a catch-22. I sent a message out to Craig last night, and unfortunately I did not check if he responded on Twitter. This isn't his tool. This is just something that he uses. If you know, please tell me. I want to find an answer for that, because that's the only thing about this that didn't make sense. Otherwise, it looks pretty cool. All the instructions show using it for pretty much everything. See, there you go, multi-cluster services. Oh my God, I just totally spilled coffee everywhere. I totally almost knocked my coffee over. I have nothing. Oh, I have tissues. Awesome. Well, the mixer will probably survive. Right. Anyway. The show was almost perfect. So if you know, let me know in the comments. Let me know on Twitter. Let's find an answer to that. And okay, so Mo says maybe he's setting up a VPN network between data centers. From the instructions, it looks like you don't need to have the WireGuard VPN enabled already. That's not in the instructions. The instructions are like, if you want this, go and like fire it up and connect your stuff and it'll just work with Kubernetes. But yeah, we need to know, how do you get the remote nodes connected to the cluster such that you can then, it wouldn't make sense to have a VPN and then install VPN communication when you could just have a VPN. Anyway, I don't know. There's something that I'm missing. I'm totally sure of it. Help me out. Let's get an answer. But that is all that we have time for today. Thank you for coming and joining me in today's Coffee and Cloud Native. I will post all of the links in the video description and the Git repo as soon as the show ends. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll get a notification when that happens. If you have something that you would like for me to consider for the show, hit me up and let me know. My contact details are in the video description, or you can tweet with the CNCN hashtag and I will pick it up. If I mentioned a tool that you use, or if you have an answer for Kilo, please let me know in the comments. And of course, if you liked what you saw today, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be sure to click the little bell to get notifications when the next show starts. I'll be here every weekday, as long as there's something to talk about. And in fact, tomorrow, I'll be doing this show live from KubeCon, which is kind of funny because live already from my house. But we're actually going to, I'm going to select content from people who are at KubeCon. Hopefully I can get that done today. And we'll have a KubeCon special show for tomorrow. So come back and check it out. Hopefully more people will join. There's already conversation happening. And Wojtek says, hopefully the go live button is okay. Yeah, that's over here. All of the streaming equipment is over there. It's like, here's my checklist for today. Now it's coffee all over. All right, I have kept you guys for long enough. We are over time. Have a great day. Keep on learning every day. Just keep learning. Come hang out with me. All right. Thank you. I'll see you in the next show.